The Resolute drifted quietly through the black sea of space, its silver hull reflecting the pale light of a nearby star. Inside the command deck, Captain Elias Thorne sat in the captain's chair, watching the readings on the main display. It had been an uneventful week of patrol, until the sensors picked up something unusual. "Captain, I'm detecting an object ahead," said Officer Marin, the ship's sensor specialist. "Small, metallic, and it's not moving under its own power." Elias leaned forward. "Is it debris?" "Negative, sir. It's an escape pod." The crew exchanged glances. An escape pod out here, in the middle of deep space, meant trouble. They were far from any established trade routes. Whoever was inside must have been drifting for a long time. "Bring us closer," Elias ordered. "Activate the retrieval arm." The Resolute moved slowly toward the object. The pod was battered, its metal surface scorched, but the design was unlike anything they'd seen before. It wasn't human-made, nor did it match any alien species in the United Galactic Database. As the pod was brought into the cargo bay, Engineer Harlow examined it through the thick glass of the observation panel. "Looks old, but there's advanced tech in the hull. I can't identify half of this." "Can we open it?" Elias asked. "Yeah, but you might want medical on standby." Inside the bay, a hiss of pressurized air filled the room as the pod's hatch released. Slowly, the heavy door swung open. A cold mist spilled out, curling around the boots of the crew. For a moment, no one moved. Then they saw her. A young girl, no more than 12 years old, lay inside. Her hair was pale as frost, her skin almost as white as the mist that surrounded her. She wore a strange fabric that shimmered faintly under the lights. Not a suit, not armor, but something in between. Her chest rose and fell slowly. She was alive. Medical Officer Lyra stepped forward quickly, scanning her with a handheld device. "Vitals are stable. She's in some kind of deep stasis sleep, but not like any I've seen. I can wake her, but it might take time." "Do it," Elias said quietly. The crew worked in silence, connecting cables and using a soft beam of light to reverse the stasis effect. Slowly, the girl's eyes fluttered open. They were a striking shade of silver, almost metallic. She looked around in confusion, her gaze darting from one crew member to another. "It's all right," Elias said gently. "You're safe. You're aboard a human ship." The girl didn't respond. She just stared, as if she didn't understand. When she finally spoke, it was in a language no one recognized, melodic, flowing, but completely alien. "She's speaking something I've never heard before," Marin said, frowning. "Not even close to anything in the translator's database." The girl's voice trembled as she spoke again, but her words remained a mystery. Lyra placed a blanket around her shoulders and led her toward the med bay. She followed without resistance, still scanning the room as if every wall, every light, was strange to her. Later, in the quiet of the captain's quarters, Elias replayed the pod's sensor logs. The energy signature it gave off wasn't just rare, it was impossible. The readings showed it had come from a region of space beyond mapped territory, possibly even from another galaxy. And the construction of the pod. It had technology humans hadn't even begun to dream about. Elias knew one thing for certain. Someone, somewhere, would come looking for her. By the next morning, rumors had already spread among the crew. Some said she was an alien child in human form. Others thought she might be part of an ancient experiment. No one knew her name. No one knew where she came from. She remained silent most of the time, watching, listening. In the mess hall, she sat at a table, holding a small cup of warm broth but barely drinking it. Crew members gave her space, unsure how to approach. Only Elias walked over and sat beside her. "You've been through a lot," he said softly, "but you're safe here." She didn't answer, but her silver eyes flicked toward him for a brief moment before looking away. The ship's AI reported something strange later that day. The pod, now stored in a secure bay, was emitting faint bursts of energy, patterns that almost looked like a signal. The bursts repeated at irregular intervals, as though someone or something was trying to find it. Harlow shook his head after running diagnostics. "Captain, this isn't just a distress beacon. This is a locator tag. Whoever made this pod can track it. They already know where we are." That night, Elias couldn't sleep. He stood by the medbay window, watching the girl sleep under. A soft light. Who was she? Why was her escape pod carrying tech centuries ahead of anything in known space? And what kind of people, or beings, could track them across such a vast distance? The Resolute sailed through the darkness like a lone lantern drifting on an endless ocean. Inside, the hum of the engines was steady, but the air on the ship felt tense. Everyone knew the truth now. The strange pod had been sending out signals. Someone, somewhere, might already be following them. Captain Elias Thorne stood at the main viewport, hands clasped behind his back. Stars streaked by as the ship cruised at light speed, but his mind wasn't on the beauty of space. His thoughts were on the girl. Her name was still a mystery. She refused food most of the time, speaking in that same unknown language when she did try to communicate. But sometimes, she would look out a window for long minutes, eyes distant, as if she remembered something from far away. "Captain," Officer Marin called from the sensor station. "I'm picking up encrypted transmissions, multiple sources. They're not directed at us, yet, but the frequencies, they're converging in our direction." Elias turned sharply. "How far?" "3 systems away," Marin replied. "But they're moving fast. And, Captain, the ships are from different species. Zevrath warships, Sorin patrols, even a few unidentified signatures. This isn't random." Elias frowned. "A gathering of warships from different factions? That doesn't happen unless there's a treaty summit or a hunt." Harlow, the engineer, entered the deck carrying a datapad. "You might want to see this," he said, placing it on the console. "I've been analyzing the pod's hull alloy. Captain, it's not in any database, not even in restricted military archives. This stuff could survive a direct hit from a plasma cannon." Elias studied the readings. "And yet, it's been drifting out here, damaged." "Exactly," Harlow said. "Someone with technology like this shouldn't be losing ships in deep space." The conversation was cut short when the girl walked onto the bridge. She moved slowly, her bare feet almost silent against the metal floor. She didn't seem afraid of the crew anymore, but she still kept her distance from most of them. She approached the viewport and pressed her small hand against the glass, staring at the stars. "What is it?" Elias asked. Her eyes flicked to him, then back to the void outside. She spoke a single word in her language, voice soft but clear. "Sailvara." The translator couldn't interpret it, only returning a flat, unknown word detected. "Sailvara?" Elias repeated, trying the sound himself. She nodded faintly. That night, Elias asked the ship's AI to cross-reference the word with any known galactic languages. Hours passed, and finally the AI replied. Result: possible match. Ancient Zevrath dialect, obsolete for over 500 years. Meaning uncertain. Closest translation: lost sky. The next day, strange things began happening. Marin reported. Unusual power fluctuations in the ship's long-range scanners. Tiny disruptions, almost like echoes. "It's as if something out there is listening to us, then trying to hide," she said. Later, the girl had a sudden episode in the medbay. She collapsed to the floor, clutching her head and speaking rapidly in her language. Lyra, the medical officer, quickly scanned her but found no injury. When the girl calmed down, she seemed disoriented and frightened. "She's been having vivid dreams," Lyra told Elias. "She talks in her sleep. It's almost always the same phrases. And sometimes she cries. Elias visited her later in the small quarters they'd given her. The room was quiet except for the low hum of the life support systems. She sat on the bed, knees pulled close, staring at a small cup of water in her hands. "You had another dream," he said gently. She didn't answer at first, then set the cup aside and reached out toward him, drawing shapes in the air with her finger: a star, a crescent moon, and a spiral. Elias recognized the pattern. It was a star chart, crude but clear. He pulled up a holographic projection from his wrist. "Device. Show me," he said. The girl pointed at one of the stars. Then she tapped her chest. "That's where you're from," Elias guessed. She nodded. The coordinates were far beyond mapped space, beyond even the most daring explorer routes. If her home was there, it was no wonder no one recognized her. 2 days later, Resolute dropped out of light speed to scan a small asteroid belt for resources. The moment they slowed, the sensors went wild. "Incoming signatures," Marin called. "Multiple ships. Fast approach." Elias was at her side in seconds. "Identify." The screen lit up with red icons. 3 Zavrath war frigates, 2 Sorin raiders, and 1 massive vessel with an unregistered signature. "They're not fighting each other," Marin said in disbelief. "They're moving together. Toward us." Elias's gut tightened. "They've made an alliance. That means they want the same thing." The girl appeared at the edge of the bridge again, her silver eyes locked on the display. She whispered something in her own language, a word filled with fear. The ships stopped just short of firing range. A single transmission came through, heavily encrypted. The AI cracked it enough to translate. "Return the Starborn. No harm will come to your crew." No one on the bridge spoke for a long moment. Then Harlow whispered, "Starborn. Could that be her?" Elias's mind raced. The girl's strange technology, the converging fleets, the ancient word meaning lost sky. Whoever she was important enough to bring multiple rival empires to the same hunting ground. "Captain," Marin said, breaking the silence, "they'll be within weapon range in 20 minutes. Elias looked at the girl. She stood, very still, her expression unreadable. But there was something in her eyes, a mix of fear and sadness. "We're not handing her over," Elias said finally. "Not until we know the truth." Somewhere deep in space, the stars seemed to grow colder. The fleet hung in space like a wall of steel and shadow, their dark shapes blotting out the stars. The Resolute floated at the center of the tension, its smaller frame dwarfed by the warships that surrounded it. On the bridge, every crew member was at their station, eyes fixed on their screens. The air felt heavy, like the silence before a storm. "They're holding position," Marin reported. "No weapons powered, yet." Elias leaned forward in the captain's chair. "They want us to be afraid," he said. "They're waiting for us to blink first." From the comm station, Officer Rafe spoke up. "Captain, incoming transmission. It's audio and visual, high encryption. Patch it through." The main screen shifted from the view of the enemy ships to the image of a grand hall, dimly lit by glowing columns of green light. At the far end, a tall figure sat on a throne carved from black stone. Her armor shimmered like liquid metal, and a crown of sharp crystal framed her head. Her eyes were a deep violet, glowing faintly. "I am Queen Serath of the Zavrath Empire," the figure said, her voice cold and commanding. "You have something that belongs to me." Elias kept his face calm. "You mean the girl?" The Queen's eyes narrowed. "The Starborn child. She was taken from my people. You will return her to me at once." Elias glanced at the girl, who stood quietly at the side of the bridge. She didn't step forward. Instead, she lowered her head, her pale hair falling like a curtain to hide her face. I don't give away passengers without knowing why, Elias said. What is she to you? For a moment, the Queen didn't answer. Her gaze shifted slightly as if studying Elias. Then she said, That is not your concern, human. Elias felt the tension rise in the room. It is my concern. She's on my ship, and my crew's safety depends on knowing the truth. The Queen's voice hardened. If you refuse, I will take her by force. You cannot outrun us. Maybe not, Elias admitted. But you'll have to destroy us to get her, and then you lose the very thing you came for. The Queen's lips curved, not in amusement, but in calculation. You are braver than most humans I've met. Or more foolish. She leaned forward slightly. Very well. I will come to you. Prepare to receive me. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Captain, Marin said. She's bringing her flagship closer. Estimated docking in 10 minutes. The Zevrath flagship approached like a moving fortress, its black hull covered in glowing lines of alien script. Docking clamps from Resolute extended reluctantly, locking onto the massive ship with a shudder that echoed through the smaller vessel. Elias stood in the airlock chamber flanked by 2 security officers. The girl stood beside Lyra, looking smaller than ever. The crew didn't know what to expect. An armed boarding party, perhaps, or a cold exchange of threats. The airlock door hissed open. Queen Sarath stepped through, taller than Elias had expected, her presence filling the narrow chamber. She wore a cloak of deep blue over her armor, and her crown glinted faintly under the ship's lights. Behind her came 2 guards in ornate black armor, their faces hidden by mirrored masks. The Queen's gaze swept over the chamber, and then she saw the girl. Everything changed. The Queen's expression shifted from controlled authority to something else entirely. Her steps slowed. The proud line of her shoulders seemed to tremble. Her violet eyes widened as if she were seeing a ghost. The girl looked up at her, silver eyes meeting violet. There was a long, breathless silence. Then, without warning, Queen. Sarath dropped to her knees. The guards froze, clearly shocked. The crew of the Resolute stared, unable to believe what they were seeing. The Queen, ruler of one of the most feared empires in the galaxy, was kneeling before a child. Her voice, when it came, was broken. Saren, she whispered, the word trembling in the air. Daughter of the lost sky. The girl took a small step forward, as if uncertain, then another. She stopped just a pace away from the Queen, who reached out slowly, almost afraid, to touch her. Elias felt the weight of the moment, though he didn't understand it. He exchanged a glance with Lyra, who looked just as bewildered. Finally, the Queen rose to her feet, but the steel in her eyes had softened. She turned to Elias. You have been protecting my granddaughter. The bridge crew gasped. Even Elias had to take a step back. Granddaughter, he repeated. Yes, the Queen said, her voice regaining a measure of strength. She was taken from us many years ago, stolen during a time of great betrayal. I believed her dead. The girl said something in her own language, a question. The Queen's face darkened. She replied softly, and the girl's eyes filled with tears. Elias could feel the tension in the air shifting. Whatever this was, it wasn't just a family reunion. There was danger in the Queen's voice. Danger not from her, but from others. The Queen looked back at Elias. You must understand, her presence here puts you in grave danger. There are those who will kill her to claim the throne, and if they learn she is with you, they will not hesitate to destroy your ship. Elias folded his arms. Then maybe you should tell me exactly what we're up against. The Queen's gaze was steady. We are up against the most dangerous coalition in this quadrant. My enemies united to hunt her. They will not stop until she is in their hands or dead. The crew of the Resolute gathered in the conference room. The lights were dim, the hum of the ship steady, but the air was tense. Everyone knew the queen of the Zevrath Empire did not step onto a foreign vessel without reason, and certainly not to kneel before a child. Queen Serath stood at the head of the table, her tall frame still radiating authority. Her violet eyes moved from one crew member to the next, measuring them. The girl sat beside her, small and quiet, her silver eyes fixed on the tabletop. Elias sat opposite the queen, arms crossed. "You said she's your granddaughter. I need more than that. Who is she really? Why are so many ships chasing her?" The queen's gaze hardened, but her voice was calm. "Her name is Siren, though among my people she is known as the Starborn. She was born during a rare alignment of our twin suns, a moment our prophecies claim comes only once every 5 centuries. Children born under this light are believed to carry the strength to unite or destroy empires." Harlow, standing against the wall, frowned. "That sounds like legend, not science." The queen's eyes flicked to him. "Perhaps. But legends shape the actions of rulers and the fears of the people. My enemies believe if they control her, they will control the throne. If they cannot control her, they will end her life." Elias leaned forward. "You said she was taken." The queen nodded, her voice tightening. 7 years ago, there was an attempt to overthrow me. In the chaos, assassins struck at my family. My son and his wife, her parents, were killed. Loyalists smuggled Saren away in that pod, hoping to hide her until the danger passed. But the ship carrying her vanished into deep space. I searched every system for her. I believed she was gone forever." She looked at the girl with something close to pain in her eyes. "And now, after all these years, I find her here, on a human vessel." Saren glanced up at Elias, then back at the queen. She said something in her native tongue, her voice soft but trembling. The queen's expression softened, but she didn't translate. Elias studied them both. "So every ship out there is part of some alliance to capture her?" "Yes," the queen replied. "The Zevrath Empire has many rivals. Some have joined forces with traitors within my own court. They have spies in every sector. The moment they detected her pod signal, they moved to claim her." Marin, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "If that's true, Captain, it means they'll follow us no matter where we go." Elias looked at the queen. "Then why not just take her back to your flagship right now?" The queen's jaw tightened. "Because if I return with her openly, the war will begin at once. My enemies will strike before I can secure her safety. I need time. Time to rally my loyal fleets. Time to prepare. Until then, she cannot be seen aboard my ship." "So you want us to hide her?" Elias said. The queen nodded. "You are human, neutral. Your ship can travel unnoticed through places my enemies cannot. They will expect me to keep her close. They will not expect me to trust her to you." Lyra frowned. "That's a dangerous gamble, Your Majesty." The queen looked directly at Elias. "Humans are unpredictable. You are not bound by our politics, our traditions, or our rules. That is why I am standing here asking you, not commanding you." Elias thought for a long moment. The weight of the decision pressed against him. Keeping Siren on the Resolute would mean becoming the target of every warship in the sector, but handing her over might mean her death. "You said she could unite or destroy empires," Elias said slowly. "Which do you believe she'll do?" The queen's expression was unreadable. "I believe she will unite them, but belief is not certainty." Saren shifted in her chair. She reached into the folds of her strange clothing and pulled out a small, metallic disc. She set it on the table and tapped it twice. A faint holographic image appeared. A star map with one glowing point far beyond known territory. "She's been drawing that," Elias murmured, remembering her sketches. "In the air," the queen nodded. "That is her birthplace, a world sacred to my people, a world my enemies cannot find. If you take her there, she will be safe, For now. Marin's eyes widened. Captain, that's deep in uncharted space. We'd be weeks out of range of any help. That may be why it will work, Elias replied. Suddenly, the ship's alarm blared. Rafe's voice came over the comm. Captain, hostile ships are breaking formation. 2 are moving directly toward us. Weapons are charging. The Queen's guards reached for their weapons, but Elias was already on his feet. Get the girl. To the med bay. Now! The Queen rose as well, her violet eyes flashing. This is sooner than I expected. Elias gave her a hard look. Then it's time to decide, Your Majesty. Do we run, or do we fight? She held his gaze for a heartbeat, then said, Run. But remember, they will follow until one of us falls. Minutes later, the Resolute was cutting through the void at full speed, its engines roaring. Enemy fire streaked past, but the smaller human ship darted between bursts, weaving through the gaps. The Zevrath flagship did not follow. It held position, masking its intent. In the medbay, Siren sat quietly on the bed, clutching the metallic disc in her small hands. She didn't cry, but her eyes stayed fixed on the floor, as if she knew this was only the beginning. Back on the bridge, Elias gripped the armrest of his chair. The Queen's words echoed in his mind. Unite or destroy empires. He didn't know which fate awaited them, but he knew this. From the moment that pod was pulled aboard, their path had been set, and there was no turning back now. The Resolute had been running for 3 days. Every time they thought they'd lost their pursuers, new signals appeared on the scanners. Different ships, same pattern. The hunters were relentless. Elias sat in the captain's chair, staring at the holographic map of the sector. Red blips moved like slow predators, closing in from multiple directions. The green icon marking the Resolute was boxed in. They're tightening the net, Marin said, her voice low. We've got maybe 12 hours before they have us surrounded. Elias rubbed his forehead. And the Queen's flagship? Still. Holding position where we left her, Marin replied. Not moving. Not sending help. Harlow leaned over the map. We can't keep running forever. Sooner or later they'll catch us. Elias knew he was right. He looked toward the med bay. Doctor on the monitor where Saren sat quietly on the bed, legs tucked under her. She had been silent most of the day, speaking only to ask for water. But her eyes, they carried something heavier than fear. That evening, Elias went to see her. The med bay was dim, lit only by a soft overhead light. Saren was holding the small, metallic disc again, turning it over in her hands. Elias sat on the chair beside her bed. You've been holding on to that since we found you, he said gently. Is it just a map? She hesitated, then shook her head. She tapped the disc. Twice. A faint light shimmered, showing the same star map as before. But this time there was movement. A glowing path traced from their current position to the distant world marked in gold. Elias frowned. That's your home? She nodded, then pointed to him, then to the map, and said something in her language. The translator failed to understand the words, but Elias thought he knew what she meant. You want me to take you there? She gave a small, hopeful nod. Back on the bridge, Elias gathered his senior officers, Marin, Harlow, and Lyra. If we follow the map, he said, we'll be deep into uncharted space in a matter of days. No one will follow that far. But once we cross that line, we'll be out of any known lanes, far from help. Harlow leaned back in his chair. Captain, you're talking about leaving every safe route behind. If something goes wrong out there, it's safer than waiting here for them to surround us, Elias replied, and I promised her I'd get her somewhere safe. Marin crossed her arms. And if this is a trap, we don't know if that planet even exists. For all we know, her enemies are waiting there. Elias looked at each of them in turn. I know the risks, but I also know this. If we hand her over, she's gone. If we keep running in circles, we'll burn out our engines. before we reached the next port. This is the only path forward. The room was silent. Finally, Lyra spoke. Then I'm with you, Captain. Harlow sighed. Guess I am too, but I don't like it. Marin shook her head but gave a small nod. All right, let's do it. Just as the decision was made, the alarm blared. Multiple ships incoming, Rafe shouted from the comm station. 3 Zevrath war frigates, 2 Sorin raiders, and something big. Elias moved to the viewport. Out of the blackness, a massive vessel emerged, sleek, jagged, and far larger than the Resolute. Its hull was black with crimson markings, and its weapons glowed faintly. They've found us, Marin said. A voice came through the comms, deep and cold. Human vessel Resolute. This is Commander Vask of the Coalition Fleet. You have in your possession the one known as the Starborn. Hand her over, and your crew will be spared. Elias didn't respond. You have 1 minute to decide, the voice continued. He turned to his crew. Get Saren to the escape corridor. If they board, we keep her moving. Marin's eyes widened. You're not really going to... Elias cut her off. I'm not handing her over. Harlow slammed a button, bringing up the tactical map. Captain, we can't win a fight against that many ships. Then we don't fight them, Elias said. We distract them long enough to break through the blockade. In the escape corridor, Lyra held Saren's hand as the ship shuddered from the first wave of weapons fire. The girl didn't cry, but her grip tightened. On the bridge, Elias gave the order. Full burn, engines at maximum, aim straight for the largest gap in their formation. The Resolute shot forward, weaving between bursts of enemy fire. The massive flagship moved to block them, but Harlow triggered the countermeasures, a cloud of flares and decoys. They're splitting their formation, Marin shouted. Good, Elias said. That's our opening. The ship dove into the gap, the hull rattling under the strain. Behind them, enemy ships scrambled to adjust, but the Resolute was already accelerating toward deep space. Then a new signal appeared on the scanners, enormous, steady, and familiar. It's the Queen's flagship, Marin said, shock in her voice. She's moving toward the enemy. On the viewport, the Zevrath flagship unleashed a barrage of fire at the pursuing ships, forcing them to scatter. The Coalition fleet turned to engage, giving the Resolute the cover it needed. Elias didn't waste the chance. Jump to hyperspace. Now! The stars stretched into streaks of light as the ship vanished into the void. Hours later, the Resolute floated in the silence of hyperspace. The crew was exhausted but alive. Elias sat in his chair, staring at the empty stars ahead. They had escaped, for now. But the choice he had made would change everything. The Queen had risked her own fleet to buy them time. That meant she truly believed Saren's survival was worth more than any political gamble. In the med bay, Saren sat by the viewport, watching the stars drift by. She held the metallic disc in her hands, tracing the glowing path toward her distant home. Elias stepped into the room. We're on our way, he told her. She looked up at him and, for the first time, gave a small smile. The Resolute moved silently through hyperspace, leaving the Coalition fleet behind. The tension that had weighed on the crew for days began to lift, replaced by cautious relief. The stars ahead were nothing more than long streaks of light, yet they seemed to promise something new. Hope. Elias sat in the captain's chair, staring at the viewports. He thought about the Queen's words, about Siren's destiny, and the danger that still followed them. One thing had become clear. She was not just any child. She was a key, a symbol, a hope, and perhaps a bridge between humans and the Zevrath Empire. In the med bay, Siren traced her finger along the glowing lines of the metallic disc. Each line pulsed faintly, like it was alive. She whispered words, in her language, her silver eyes reflecting the lights of the ship. Elias stepped in quietly. You've been through a lot, he said softly. But we're getting closer to your home. She looked at him, a mixture of relief and fear in her eyes. Say Elvira, she whispered. Yes, Elias replied, recalling the word the AI had translated long ago. The lost sky, your home. For the first time since the pod had been found, she smiled fully. It was small, but it carried the weight of years lost and hope regained. The journey through uncharted space was not easy. Sensors were on high alert, the engines strained under long hours of continuous use, and supplies were carefully rationed. The crew worked tirelessly, but morale remained surprisingly high, bolstered by the quiet presence of Siren. She had started to speak some words in English, slowly picking up basic communication. Though her accent was strange and her grammar uneven, it was enough to allow small conversations. She asked about life on the Resolute, about Earth, and about the stars they passed. In return, the crew learned fragments of her history, glimpses, of a civilization far older and more advanced than their own. She's remarkable, Marin said quietly to Elias one night in the observation deck. Not just because of what she is, but because of how calm she is under pressure. Elias nodded. Humans learn to survive, even in impossible situations, and sometimes that's more powerful than technology or armies. After 3 long weeks, the coordinates on the disk finally led them to a hidden system. A large planet hung in space, bathed in 2 suns that cast golden and silver light across its surface. Its continents were vast, covered in forests, rivers, and mountains, untouched by industry. She's home, Elias whispered. The Resolute dropped out of hyperspace, and the view from the bridge was breathtaking. The planet seemed alive, vibrant, and peaceful. And somewhere in the heart of that world awaited the Queen and her loyal fleet, ready to ensure Siren's safe return. As the Resolute approached the planet's atmosphere, a small Zevrath delegation appeared to meet them. The Queen herself waited on a landing platform, her regal presence softened by anticipation. When Siren saw her, she ran forward. The two embraced, the child's small arms around the towering Queen. Elias watched from the ship, emotions stirring within him. He had faced countless dangers in space, but none like this. None that tested the measure of compassion, courage, and trust, like keeping this girl safe. The Queen finally looked at him. Her violet eyes were steady, but they shone with gratitude. You have done what no Zevrath could, she said. You have protected her when others would have used her as a tool. Humans, your kind is truly extraordinary. Elias inclined his head. We did what had to be done. She deserved a chance. The Queen nodded, understanding far more than words could express. You have earned my respect, and the respect of my people. In the days that followed, Siren was reunited with her people. She was safe, surrounded by those who loved her, yet the bond she had formed with the humans remained strong. She spoke often of the Resolute and its crew, describing them as her protectors, her friends, and in a small, quiet way, her family. The Queen decreed a treaty. The humans would be allies of the Zevrath Empire, granted safe passage and trade rights throughout the system. It was unprecedented. No human had ever been honored in this way among the stars. Elias and his crew were celebrated not for weapons or power, but for their courage and compassion. The humans had acted in a way that no alien faction expected, with empathy, bravery, and intelligence, without violence beyond necessity. Before departing, Siren returned to the Resolute. She stood at the airlock, the metallic disc in hand. I will never forget you, she said, her voice clear and certain. You saved me, Elias smiled, and you reminded us what's worth protecting. Your people are lucky to have you. The girl nodded and stepped onto the shuttle that would take her to the Queen's palace. Elias watched as it rose, carrying her toward her destiny. He felt a quiet satisfaction and a sense of hope. For the first time, he realized that humans were more than explorers, soldiers, or travelers. They were protectors. They were daring enough to act when others hesitated. They were capable of choosing compassion over fear, even when the cost was great. As the Resolute left the system, Elias looked out at the stars. Somewhere in the vastness of the galaxy, Siren's light would shine. A reminder that humanity could make a difference, not through conquest or power, but through courage, empathy, and the determination to do what was right. The crew returned to their routines, yet the memory of the girl and the Queen's gratitude stayed with them. It was a story they would carry to every corner of space, the tale of how a human ship and its crew saved a child, united a people, and changed the course of history, not with war, but with the human way. And in that moment, Elias smiled. Humanity had proven itself, not just to the stars, but to themselves. The galaxy was vast, and dangers still lurked. But humans were ready, and they would continue to rise. The story ends with the Resolute sailing onward, its crew stronger, wiser, and forever changed, carrying the legacy of the human way, courage, compassion, and hope in a universe full of uncertainty.